All right, let's kick it off. Good to see everyone's from all over the country. So today we've got the privilege of having a few special guests with us, and we're talking about the most used and most effective practice apps. And as I mentioned earlier, if you came in early, we've got a big turnout for this one. So it's obviously a very hot topic, especially this time of year as we start to look at what kind of apps we want to implement into our own practices coming into a new year and beyond. And today we're hosted by Practice Ignition, myself and PracticeProtect. I'll introduce this properly in a second. And this is part of the XU Magazine webinar series for this year, which is going to see some really cool stuff. So if you haven't registered for any future webinars, I recommend checking out, keeping an eye on your emails because we've got some good stuff coming up. All right, I'll introduce myself quickly. My name is Brendan. I'm the Senior Account Manager here at Practice Ignition. If you want to follow me on Twitter or LinkedIn, there's my info. We've also got John Malloy, who's Head of Growth at PracticeProtect. I'll get John to introduce himself better in a second. I'd like to flick to the next page, though, where we have two very, very special guests. We've got Katie Bryan, Founder and CEO of Propeller Advisory, and James Carey, Director at Prime Partners. So, Katie, 30 seconds. Tell us where you're from, what you're up to, how long you've been with us in the industry. Go for it.
Hi, I'm Katie Bryan. I run Propeller Advisory. We originally were a Melbourne-based firm. We've now got a team in Melbourne and Queensland. Living the high life up in Queensland now. So we've been a cloud-based practice for 7 years, and I've been in the industry for 15. It's been amazing, I guess, watching how it's changed. And now I'll pass on to James.
Yeah, so my name's James Carey. I'm a director at Prime Partners, probably 15 years-ish as well, around that. I started life as a R&D consultant at one of the big fours and didn't find that to be the most fulfilling career. So I became a proper accountant and moved to Prime Partners, and now I run Prime Partners with another two sort of similar vintage partners, but the actual firm itself has a history of probably 40 years, like going back to the early 80s. And when I started there in 2009, it was a very traditional firm, paper-based work papers. You know, like they probably peaked in the early noughties. You know, GST came in and they had awesome spreadsheets and, you know, Sol 6 and, you know, all that stuff, Biztopia, which became Accountants Enterprise. So it was like they had good clients and they were good people, but they'd sort of stopped that path. And I kind of, having not started in a traditional firm as such, came with fresh eyes and sort of said, I think we can do this better. And Xero was launching at the same time. So I managed to kind of catch that wave, and now we're completely cloud and modern and, you know, all that stuff that we used to go on about a couple of years ago, but now everybody is. So anyway, that's me.
Love it. I mean, we've got plenty of experience here, and I'm sure you've both seen apps come and go. So I think we've chosen the right people to help us with this webinar. So I appreciate you both being here. And I must find out where you get your headshots done because you both look incredible. I'm going to ask you that later. All right, so let's have a quick look at the agenda. We're just going to launch into PracticeProtect first. I want to get some learnings from John, find out who he is and what PracticeProtect is. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of PracticeProtect already. And then we're going to launch into some knowledge sharing around cloud apps for accounting firms. So PracticeProtect released a report recently, a really, really good report, which you'll all get a copy of if you haven't already, outlining the most popular apps from 2021 and some learnings from that. We then want to break down each of those different categories. So John's going to take us through that and go through each one and figure out what the most popular apps are, and obviously get some feedback from our guests as well. And at the end we want to just take you through a little bit more detail around Practice Ignition and PracticeProtect. So make sure you stick around for that. If you do have any questions, there is a Q&A box, and I encourage you to use that. We can put those questions to anybody on the panel here today, so don't be afraid. And the chat box is there as well. If you want to have a chat amongst yourselves, especially if there's anything that comes up that you wanted to maybe share with your peers, maybe ask some questions of your peers, then drop that in the chat box as well. We'd love to see some chatter throughout the webinar. And we are recording this one too, so if you need to jump out early, please don't, but we'll make sure we get the recording to you. I wanted to start with a poll. It's always good to know what you're looking for. So this is going to help us maybe follow up and give you some resources, or perhaps put you in touch with the right people. So I'm just going to launch a poll here asking what you're looking for today. So there's a couple of options there you should see on your screen. You could be a practicing accountant looking to leverage technology in my practice, which I'm sure is going to be very common. Maybe you work at a practice and could benefit by adopting new technology. Maybe you're just here to keep up to date with the latest tech in industry, and I guarantee we'll have some good discussion around that today. Maybe you're a student and you're doing some research, which would be very fascinating. I'd love to. Oh, there's one person doing that. Cool. We might reach out to you and just make sure you can get as much help as you need as you start to flourish in this industry of ours. Welcome. I'll give that another sort of 10 seconds or so. So make sure you get your answers in. If you have anything that's not on there, maybe drop it into the chat box as well, and we can get in touch with you later. Cool. I'll wrap that up there. Thanks everyone for your responses. And we'll move on. John, I'm going to hand over to you, mate. I would love to hear your history, and I know it's been in the industry for a while, and a little bit more about PracticeProtect.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Brendan. So yeah, I'm John Malloy. So I'm head of growth here at PracticeProtect. And yeah, I've been working in the accounting industry since 2017. So I've been with PracticeProtect that whole time, and yeah, really seen the company in the industry grow and move more cloudwards over that time. So what PracticeProtect do is, we're all about cybersecurity. Okay, so we're the #1 cybersecurity platform for accountants worldwide, and how we help firms is in a few different ways. Okay, so firstly, it's about managing access and identity. Okay, as we're seeing firms move more to the cloud, there's not the same kind of security risks around hosting data. Okay, obviously any data that's stored online on the cloud, is secured, through those apps. Really, the biggest risk we're then seeing is around access to that. So we give accountants, a really simple way to easily access and securely access all of their online data. Around that, we also provide training and compliance documentation to our clients as well, because we know that working online and with cybersecurity, it's not just a technical issue, it's a human issue as well. Okay, so we provide training to our clients to make sure that your team know what not to do and that they're not a cybersecurity risk for you guys.
Great, thanks, John. I don't think I ever come across a PI user who isn't using PracticeProtect. So if you're not using PracticeProtect, I recommend having a good look at it, and we'll go through that a little bit later in this webinar as well. So moving on to the sharing knowledge part, this is what we're going to talk about today. So John, I'm going to hand back to you, and I'd love to hear more about this incredible report that you've released this year.
Yeah, awesome. So this report has been a long time coming. We've been looking at this for a while, and really since 2017, we've been watching this internally. Okay, so through PracticeProtect, essentially what we do is we give firms an area to access all of their online applications securely. So through that, we can then see what apps firms are using. Okay, we can see what the most popular apps out there. And whenever we're meeting with firms, we're consulting with them, we always get the question, what are other firms using? Okay, so that's why we went out and we put this report together to make that data available to all accounting firms. So we put this together, it wasn't just ourselves working on this. We worked with the team at CA Catalyst, collaborated with them, and also Sholto McPherson at Digital First. So really took all of the data outside of PracticeProtect and then put it in this report so that firms can see what the most popular apps are out there. And also it'd be great to discuss the data for this report, Brendan. So on the next slide, because before we go through the actual findings, really just want to let you guys know exactly where we pulled this data from. So as I said, it's based on the usage of firms actually using PracticeProtect. So it's the usage from 1,170 firms, 13,020 accounting firm team members, and it's looking at the apps that they're using inside it. With the firms that we're working with, they're typically very cloud-centric firms. So as PracticeProtect is a cloud application, we've only got the data then for cloud apps that are accessed. Okay, so that's why you'll see in the report and in what we discussed today, there's not any non-cloud apps mentioned because, obviously we don't have the data for those. Also, it's just important to note the size of a firm, the average firm that we're working with. So the average size of a firm that was in this report is 11 team members. Okay, so that's the kind of makeup of the report and the data that we're looking at today. Awesome.
Well, thanks, John. I think we mentioned also that everyone will get a copy of this report once we follow up this webinar. So keep an eye on your emails, and you'll get this coming through in the next day or two, if not sooner.
Yeah, great. So, firstly, what we want to look at is what are the most popular applications by category. Okay, so you can see the graph here. So this is showing the kind of apps that are being used in PracticeProtect and showing which categories are the most popular. Okay, so what this is showing here, so I'll just take the first one as example, is that 68% of firms in this data set using PracticeProtect have an app for expense management. Okay, 40% have an app for proposal software, and then you can see there 28% have an app there for reporting. So I'd be interested to hear from you guys. I'd love to get some feedback as we're going through this previous session. See if there's any surprises from any of you. So what apps you might be using already, or if there are any categories here which you guys are looking to add to your stack. But also it'd be interesting, to hear some of your thoughts, Katie and James, around some of these categories. So, Katie, are there any categories here which you think, are surprising? Maybe you would have thought they'd be higher or lower, or are there any here which you guys are looking at for Propeller?
Yeah, to be honest, I thought that maybe the proposal software would be higher. I'm surprised that it's only 40%. Makes me wonder how people are doing proposals. Maybe the old way in Microsoft Word. And we are really kind of, I think, exploring more SMSF and corporate compliance apps this year. So really excited about that. And it seems like a lot of firms are already using them, which is great. So we're a little behind the 8 ball there.
Yeah, awesome. James, and how about yourself?
Yeah, I having been on a previous panel with you talking about these numbers, it's not so much a surprise, but really more a comment that the practice management number seems low. And I think that background information is because you had no way of picking up XPM instances because you couldn't differentiate between 0 and XPM. So I would actually think that anybody who is using, PI and PracticeProtect and and that sort of space would be, 90 to 100% would be using either, XPM, Carbon, whatever else there is out there. So I think that is maybe slightly under what it actually is.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, James, because that's a really important point, is that with the data, as I said, this is based entirely on fact. What we can see in PracticeProtect, what we can see people logging into. Unfortunately, that means that we don't have data for all of the applications. So as I said at the start, non-cloud applications, they're not included in here. And the same with some apps, we just don't have the data for. So yeah, practice management, we've got 33% there, but that's not including XPM, which is obviously a massive asterisk there, because I know anecdotally speaking to, you guys, and a lot of our clients, XPM is, really the most used accounting software, and we can see some comments coming in here. So Mark is using XPM, so is Tony, and yeah, some other comments there as well.
But otherwise, I think the flow, that range of software probably makes sense with other firms that I sort of am familiar with.
Yeah, great. Well, look, let's jump into some of these categories and talk about the apps. And yeah, Katie and James, it'll be here. Great to hear your thoughts on this. So the first category we're going to look at is expense management. Okay, so this is now looking at the top apps inside of our data set for expense management. And you can see here, there shouldn't really be any surprises. You've got the 2 big ones. Okay, so what this is showing is that 50.6% of firms that have an expense management app are using Dext, and 40.1% are using HubDoc. Okay, so James, I'll be interested to get your thoughts on this first, because I know you've got some experience with both of these applications.
Yeah, and I always accept these invitations because I've got an axe to grind with Dex, so I just come and publicly slam them. And with that, I provide the caveat that I actually think the Dext, formerly Receipt Bank, is a great product. It's just that I think they're a bit lost maybe with what they need to generate some money. So it's actually a really expensive product, and I think that when they sort of came into the market, they pitched it as relatively low cost, which is easy to get small business clients onto it. But now that it's going to cost $30, $40, $50 a month, you know, a lot of smaller companies, you know, that those costs add up, and they get a bit of not dex fatigue, app fatigue. You know, personally, part of my gripe is that I had effectively a lifetime sort of deal with them of a fixed price, and they pulled it and sort of tripled the cost. And you know, I was covering that cost to basically give Dex to my clients for free to onboard it. And so now it makes me look silly having to go back to my clients to say, look, if you want to stay, it's going to cost, you know, now $50 a month or whatever that cost is. So basically every single firm that I'm speaking to is moving their clients off Dex. So I would have thought that, you know, 18 months ago, it would have been 80% Dex, you know, 20% HubDoc. But because HubDoc's free and zero, everybody is either migrating their clients to Dex, or another option which doesn't show up here is actually the zero built-in expenses, which is actually a really good solution for doing it, particularly for you know, smaller clients where it's, you know, $5 per user per month to enable. So it's quite affordable and really good. But also Xero does have that very simple built-in bill, you know, email your bill into Xero, which, you know, works fine. So I think if we were to run this number in another 12 months, we'll see the shift go. And I agree with everybody that we still have clients on Dex because they're happy to pay, and HubDoc isn't as good. Like, it's okay, but you know, a lot of the initial features that they had, like auto bank fetch, that banks have now disabled, has sort of, you know, been turned off, so it's less compelling. But you know, it's free. You know, some clients like free. That's why so many people have XPM.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, I've seen some of the chats, some of the comments come in, James, when you're talking there, like people agreeing with what you're saying there. So, you know, Annie, you know, saying, you know, commenting the same around the price. Interesting, Adrian saying here that, you know, he had a lifetime deal with Dex as well, but he's saying that, you know, in his opinion, the functionality of the HubDoc isn't there, you know, at the same level as Dex. So he's still giving Dex to clients because of that more robust functionality. But yeah, everyone's kind of echoing your comments there. Katie, it'd be great to hear your perspective on this as well. I think you use HubDoc, don't you?
I do use HubDoc, and for the exact same reason as James. So I'm going to echo James's comments. And it's interesting because I see in the Facebook Small Business Accountants group, and the story seems to be very common that Dex is pulling their old pricing and tripling their fees, and it just makes it really difficult. We've now got a very small handful of clients on Dex because they just really like Dex compared to HubDoc, but the rest of our clients have been transitioned over to HubDoc. And it's good because our clients pay for their own Xero subscription, so the cost is completely with them.
Yeah, great. That's great to hear. And yeah, James, as well, like your point about how this is changing, that's going to be something which I'm really looking forward to looking at next year. Well, sorry, not next year, this year, when we bring out the 2022 version of this report. You know, we're going to be updating this. So I'd expect, kind of based off, you know, these conversations and, you know, the kind of comments we're seeing there, that we'll see, you know, a slight change in this one. And, you know, I'm expecting to see HubDoc increase their market share there.
Yeah, and I mean, probably the other point to note is that this doesn't show the proportion of clients that would be using it. So, you know, if everybody keeps at least one subscription to Dex, like we have our subscription to Dex, they're still going to have that account. So, you know, it may not go, like I said, you know, 80-20, but I think we will see the proportion of firms using HubDoc will probably start, you know, eclipsing it since it's free.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome. We're looking at the next category, Brendan. So the next category we're looking at is proposal software, and shouldn't be any surprise here. You know, we're seeing this one really dominated here by Practice Ignition. Okay, so what we're seeing there is that 78.1% of firms in PracticeProtect using proposal software are using Practice Ignition. Also, it's worth commenting as well that our top 3 most used apps in PracticeProtect are the 3 we've discussed so far. So Dexter's the number 1, then we've got HubDoc, and then Practice Ignition. And sorry, I should say the top 3 excluding Xero. Like Xero's number 1, like that's like 99%. So it's just after that. Awesome. Katie, it'd be great to hear your thoughts. I know that you use Practice Ignition a lot in the firm.
Yeah, absolutely. So we use Practice Ignition a lot and have used it since pretty much the very beginning of our firm. When it was just me and I was working from home in my little home office, I was doing the whole Word document or just Excel proposals. I then had an issue with debtors and those sorts of things. So that was a bit of a pain. And then I found Practice Ignition and it just completely, I guess, changed our firm in terms of we now don't hold any debtors, or if we do have debtors, they're very minimal. And it has just made the proposal system and the process of issuing proposals so much more simplified. We now have our virtual assistant. I just let him know which services to put in and he creates a proposal and sends it off. So it's super simple. I love that we can record a video. We've got a brochure that's fully branded with all of our services and everything. There's a video that the client can watch when they receive the proposal, and then there's one that explains to them our next steps. So the next thing you'll get is a checklist from Carbon for our onboarding. So all in all, I think it creates a really great client experience, and we get heaps of feedback in that regard as well.
Yeah, awesome. That's great. And Brendan, I imagine you might have 1 or 2 things to say about this section here.
Well, except for the fact that this is my favorite chart in the whole presentation. But no, like the thing, Katie, that you brought up, which is probably the biggest thing about PI, is the data management piece. And it's funny, I've been with PI since I started in 2014, which seems like such a long time ago. I remember when Practice Ignition didn't even have the integrated payments feature, and it was just literally a tool used for quick onboarding, which is great, and it's still sort of our core when you think about it. But yeah, it's great to see so many practices getting transformed from having sometimes millions in debtors to then having this automated collection process, whether it be an upfront payment or a monthly recurring collection or bill on completion, even with a commitment up front. That's probably the biggest takeaway for me when it comes to PI versus some of these other tools.
Yeah, can I actually make one more comment as well about Practice Ignition? I'm a big fan, obviously, but the dashboard component is also another part that I don't think gets spoken about enough, but that is incredible in terms of forecasting future sales. What are our sales going to look like for the year? What's our acceptance rate looking like? I find that so incredibly useful. It's great.
Yeah, well, I'm seeing, and we'll get to this later when we talk about things like CRM, but there's a lot of practices starting to look at those kind of numbers a bit more these days, now that they've sort of automated a lot of their other processes. They're starting to look inwards a lot more and starting to look at marketing and conversion rates and all that kind of thing. So yeah, we hopefully will see that dashboard evolve even further to give you more metrics on your own business.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah, awesome. And James, how about yourself? Looking at proposal software, what are you guys using at Prime Partners?
So we use Practice Ignition. We don't use it exclusively, and I can sort of I'll expand on that. One thing that we spoke about before when we did this thing was we use PandaDoc, but we don't actually use it for proposals. We just use it for electronic document signing, as opposed to Xero eSign or DocuSign, which is another famous bait and switch pricing company where they'll sign you up on a $500 plan, and 6 months later they'll call you back and say, actually now it's $1,000. Then they'll call back 6 months later and go, actually it's $2,000. So that's what we happened, and we found PandaDoc just by looking for affordable alternatives for electronic signing, because it's crazy to me that, and we'll talk about electronic signing later, but yes, we use Practice Ignition, and we've kind of got a bit of a mixed model. Like I think we've got something like 3,000 entities on our tax agent portal, a couple of thousand individuals, and then a bunch of sort of business groups. And for us, it was never practical to migrate the entire client base to PI. A lot of them, we sort of had these perpetual engagement letters that they sign, and then we'd have a process of essentially at the start of the year saying, or the start of the engagement, just sending them a note saying, look, we're working on your job, this is what we're going to charge you. So we do have that fixed fee mentality. We've got a portion on monthly, but I found with my own level of organisation and the amount of stuff that we've got on, I could never get the time to update them. So I've still got people who are on 4-year-old engagements, still paying what they were paying 4 years ago. And I'll get around to it eventually, but it just hasn't happened. So, it is. I love PI for just basically onboarding new clients, and like I give them the option. Like I don't do many monthly. I do a bit, but I actually give them the option of say, look, we sort of trust you. We don't have a massive debtor issue, so we can just take the money if you want to tick that box, but if you don't worry about it. That's us. So we love it. For bigger clients that we win or that we pitch, we do actually have a word, full proposal, fancy looking template that we do use if we're trying to, I don't know, appear professional. Well, yeah. I mean, we're pretty professional, but if we're trying to give that glossy brochure, we'll use that rather than sending this link that goes to the board to look at. So yeah, we're a bit of a mixed bag, but yeah, if you're not using PI, use it. Even you don't have to roll it out universally. And I think for a smaller firm with a certain number of clients, it probably should be used with everybody, but there is a point that when you're like a 40-year-old firm with clients that are used to doing things in a certain way, you do have to bend a little bit and be flexible.
Yeah, that's great. That's really interesting. Brendan, do you see that being the case with some other firms as well? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, the thing around using PandaDoc and other tools, even if it's just Word, is not uncommon. A lot of people use Practice Ignition as like the trigger point for the journey starting, the official journey starting, and that in a lot of cases, like Katie mentioned, is getting that payment detail up front, even if it's a bill on completion element or a project. I guess the good thing is we're constantly adding more flexibility options to the application, and some of that will also be seeing some branding improvements too. So James, in the future, I'm sure we'll be able to provide you with a bit more, I guess, pizzazz when it comes to the presentation for hopefully some of those bigger clients of yours. So that'd be awesome.
And complete disclosure that this actually comes down to my own lack of time and ability to implement some of the features that are there. Like, I think that they're awesome. I just need another 3 me's to do all the stuff.
or me to come over and kick you up the bum, or one of them, or both.
Sure.
Fair enough. I'll be going through a little quick demo of PI later. I can show everyone what the actual end result looks like, and I can talk to you about how simple it is to set up, especially these days. So yeah, that's all good. Thanks, mate.
Yeah. Awesome. Great. Well, looking at the next category, which is electronic signing. So this is quite an interesting one because we've seen some changes in this area. So we can see at the moment, it's dominated by Adobe Sign. So with 56.5% with an e-signing app in PracticeProtect using Adobe Sign, then DocuSign and HelloSign. And this report came out midway through 2021. So then we know that kind of around that time, there were a few, accounting specific apps launched. So we had Anature and FuseSign launched there. So obviously at the moment, that's showing them, with quite a small percentage, but I know anecdotally through speaking to other accountants, that we're seeing lots of people jump across to those, accounting specific apps. So James, I know you commented that you're using PandaDocs for e-signing, which, like we said then, kind of floats between the categories. Katie, it would be really interesting to hear, the setup at Propeller Advisory and what you guys are using.
Yeah, so we use a mixture, and mainly we use ZeroSign, which I'm not sure if that's included in here. And then when we're not using ZeroSign. We're using HelloSign for any other documents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, awesome. And have you either of you like looked at making any changes in this area, or have you looked at any changes to? Sorry.
Not really, but from seeing this, actually, it reminded me that I do want to check out Anature. So I've just actually opened that up on my browser on my other screen so that I remember to do that after this session. So thanks.
Yeah, awesome. And sorry, you go, James.
Oh, I was going to say, there was a comment about us sensing a theme. I mean, we are still accountants, so we still tend to be cheapskates. Or not cheap, we pay for value. My biggest issue with electronic signing is that it should not cost the same or more than post. The whole point of it was that, yes, okay, we don't have to print stuff and put it in the post office, but it's a massive rip-off, basically, is my feeling. Xero have nailed it in their partnership with Adobe and eSign, and we do use that for all of our like ITRs and simple stuff that we send out. When we've got a family group, it kind of like there's a couple of things, functionality that they probably need to improve, and I haven't been paying attention. Maybe they have, but if you're putting financials in, I don't think you can set signing order. So we tend to, in our firm, set the director or whoever's signing it to be first. So we actually use that as the opportunity to make sure stuff's right, and so we can then cancel it before it gets to the client, and that's what we can do in PandaDoc. But Anature, it's Australian, it's new, it's from the creator of Now Infinity, which is a great product, and so I'm sure it's fine. And using the contacts that they've built integrations into FYI, the document management, and there's some pretty cool stuff going on. But I can't get over the cost. I don't want to pay $1 per, or $1.50 or $2 per electronic package. So we'll stick with PandaDoc. I don't know how much HelloSign costs. So if anybody knows, share it.
I have a feeling it's free up to a certain amount.
That's a good,
I think it's like 5 signatures a month or something like that is free.
Yeah,
so
it's free, and we don't
decent
send that
business,
many
it's going to
outside
be
of Xero.
difficult. Yeah.
It's interesting to your point around family signs. I'd have to double check, but I think that ViewSign does have functionality inbuilt around that with regards to family groups. I'd need to brush up on it. I haven't seen it in a while, but I think that it does have some functionality there around that. But yeah, definitely, that's the kind of stuff we're looking at. And I can see, we've got a couple of comments coming in. So Carol's, saying that they use Anature and that they've got a great product. And Brett's just saying that Anature's $2 per envelope. And a detailed comment here from Adrian saying that they're about to implement ViewSign because it integrates with CAS, FS360 and Change GPS, Lightyear docs, sweep files. And yeah, he's echoed my comment there. So it does for family group docs better than others.
Yeah. And just to compare costs, I think PandaDoc might be something like $600 a year, and we probably send like 3,000 envelopes. So if we're talking Anature would cost us $6,000, 90% saving in my mind is actually worth it.
Yeah, definitely. Great, awesome. Thanks for that. Next up, so we're looking at the reporting applications, and obviously there's a lot of different options out there for firms to use. James, it'd be interesting to hear from yourself here. So what reporting apps do you use at Prime Partners?
So there's probably 2 components to this. For clients, like we do have a Spotlight subscription that we pay for, and we've got a handful of clients that we do the monthly report, and it's fine. we tend, for most of our sort of, annual meetings and even quarterly catch-ups, we tend to just have really good Excel templates, and it's just as quick to dump data out of Xero as a spreadsheet, have some macros that quickly do it. So and it's a bit more flexible. And I find that, the big three, the Futurely, Spotlight and Fathom, I know you can cut it down, but it tends to be overkill for a lot of small business owners. Too busy, too much stuff going on. So we do use it and we can customize them heavily, but we tend to go that sort of flexible path. I do actually love Fathom, and I do love the app, what it outputs. So, I'm not knocking them, and I think that you should be, playing with them. On the internal side, we use XPM for our practice management, and it's got some real deficiencies, as I'm sure anybody that uses XPM is aware of. But we use Atani, which is basically like a interface between XPM and using Microsoft Power BI to produce a bunch of really helpful practice reports. You can also connect it with a client Xero file. So we're using Atani for some automated consolidation reporting for some clients that need it. And you can do a lot. So essentially, everything we're doing with Excel, we will be able to do with Atani and Power BI. We just need the time. There is another theme of not having time when you're doing 10 different roles. And maybe we need to hire a Power BI expert, but we just haven't even had time to think about it. So that's one. There's another one on here that isn't on here, which if anybody is using XPM, I really recommend you look at, and it's link reporting, and that comes out of New Zealand, and not as sort of flexible as the Power BI Atani stuff, but those guys are just the best. I think they are probably the best people in the world at how to use Workflow Max XPM, and they've literally written a book. I think this is the book. They've written a book about it, and they've got some free videos on how to use it. And basically, link reporting just simplifies it. So all of our team get, I don't know if it's fortnightly, but they'll get fortnightly team individual performance reports, like what was your billing, what was your write-offs, all that sort of traditional stuff that's actually really useful to run a firm. So that's what we use.
Yeah, I think personally, I think link reporting is great. I had a catch up with the guys over there just at the end of last year, saw their products, and yeah, you're right. The kind of detail you can get, the reports like work in play, you can see where the efficiencies and deficiencies are is definitely great. And for sure, I know it's not on that report there, but it will be on the one in 2022, so we can see how that's stacking up and how that's being utilized in the industry. Awesome. Katie, it'd be great to hear your thoughts here, because I know you're not using one of the big three, are you? You're using another one on this list.
That's right. So I have tried all of the big three. And again, similar to James, they are very complex for a lot of our clients, and maybe do things a little bit too complicated than they're looking for, but also they don't do everything that I need them to do, which is hard. So we find that we do use Excel quite a bit as well for our monthly and quarterly catch-ups and those sorts of things. But a tool that we use and absolutely love that we use for monthly reporting for our clients is Sift Analytics. They produce some amazing, really cool and simple reports that provide kind of all the information that your clients are interested in. And you can customize them as well to suit the client or to suit how you want the reports to look and what you want them to detail. So things like top 10 customers, top 10 expenses, your top sales lines for the month, all of those sorts of things, which is really, really cool and really interesting. And I haven't seen it anywhere else. They look good and they're really easy to produce. And the subscription is quite reasonable as well. There's also another one which I came across late last year called RT Reporting, and I think they're in their beta version. They're just producing the system at the moment, but that's also really cool. It tackles budgeting and cash flow, has a little bit of the power of one, where you can play with the changing a gross profit by 1% and what does that look like for your bottom line and that sort of thing, which is really cool. So they're another one to have a look at that aren't on this list yet.
And you just reminded me, there's another one we used to use and I loved it. And for some reason, we let the subscription lapse a while ago and I haven't been back. But it's called Cash Flow Story. Super simple. It's by the guy who originally developed MYOB Profit Optimizer. And it's kind of like, so, you know, you get a spotlight report and it's got, you know, current ratio and quick ratio and sort of all this stuff that, you know, accountants understand, but clients, there we go. It's known, people know it in the chat. So all this stuff, but the Cash Flow Story kind of will build this story in a sense, or, you know, a narrative for you to work through with your clients where their cash has gone. So really, really simple, but worth looking at. And I think it was like, it wasn't even the money that we didn't renew it. It was like $500 a year or something. So take a look at that.
Yeah,
awesome. Take a look at that thing.
Awesome. Thanks for the tip there, James. Great. We'll move on, just conscious of time, we'll move on to our last category we've got here, which is practice tools. And I just want to say there is more categories, there is more information in the report, but just, you know, with the restraints of, you know, this 1 hour session, we've just chosen to look at these categories. But the last one up here is practice tools. So you can see here, this is a kind of mixture of different accounting tools. So you'll see here, you know, they're not necessarily competing with one another. So obviously Change GPS, you know, the top tool there on 19.9%, awesome tool, but very different features to say, you know, FYI docs, which is more, you know, FYI, which is, you know, document management, practice management. So yeah, quite a wide range of different tools here. James, be interested to hear from yourself here. You know, of these on the screen here, I think you're using FYI docs. Is that the one?
Yeah, so we so on this screen we are using Account Kit FYI. I demoed Expert and thought it was great and just didn't get around to implementing it because, you know, I had other things to do. It used to be easy when I had when I was just allowed to run around and do stuff, but now I've got responsibilities. You know, young family that demand my time and all of that. So yeah, I loved Expert and think that if you're doing bookkeeping, you should definitely have that or whatever the other one that I can't remember that I also demoed and thought was pretty cool. We used to, so when we went off our file server to the cloud, we used Suite Files, and it's a really good system that basically just sits on top of Microsoft SharePoint. And so if you're used to the traditional folder structure of, you know, you've got a client name and you've got a year and then you've got a couple of subfolders, like it made a lot of sense to us and the rest of our team in migrating to the cloud of, look, it's kind of the same thing that you're used to of a file server and dump stuff on there, but it's just, you know, on Microsoft Office with a fancy overlay. It was sort of expensive for a fancy overlay, and it was sort of static for a while. Then I know that there is some development that's been going on, but I'd looked at FYI a couple of years ago, and it's a completely different paradigm of, you know, it's a relational database for storing your documents, and if you're not used to that, you hate it and it's horrible, because you want a client and you want a folder, and I want to store my stuff like I used to. But once you get your head around how it works, it is so much better. And FYI, like Atani, like Link, are just all these patches on the deficiencies that XPM have. So FYI's got some great sort of job management tools built in, and it's sort of, you know, you can have a Kanban style board of your jobs, and it'll integrate back and forth, and it's awesome, and it's expensive, but it's worth the money. Unlike $2 an envelope in my mind. But we've never used How Now. Many years ago we used Change GPS, and like I always loved the concept of what they were trying to deliver, of don't reinvent the wheel, every single accountant, don't build your own, you know, templates and all of that. But again, there's a lot of stuff that, you know, would be nice to do, but you know, I don't know, you really, I think the moral of the story is you need somebody who is dedicated to implementing this stuff. And that used to be me, but I don't have time to do it anymore. So yeah, anyway, that's me.
Yeah, some great points there, and definitely around your point with FYI, like I've definitely heard that feedback that, like, yes, it is a steep learning curve, and you know, there's a lot of training and time investment for implementing, but then once practices get that, you know, we've got, you know, spoken to lots of raving fans of FYI there. Yeah, I can see there's a few comments coming in, people echoing that. Katie, it'd be great to hear from you. I know when we caught up earlier, you said that actually of the apps on this list, the practice tools, you know, Propeller aren't using any of these, but really a core one which you are using, and it's one which, you know, you could arguably place on this list, is Carbon. So that's not appearing here as it was on our practice management list, which we've not had the time to run through today, but I know that's a core app, so it'd be great to hear your thoughts there.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have trialed AccountKit and My Work Papers and Expert and loved all of them. We just didn't go ahead. I think at that time we were kind of taking on a lot of different apps and we had to pick and choose rather than getting a lot of app exhaustion through the team. So Carbon, I absolutely love. That's our practice management tool. We used to use XPM, and to be honest, it just wasn't pretty enough for me. Like, I want something to be visually appealing and easy to read. I love the Kanban section in Carbon, where you can easily see what the whole team is working on, what you're working on. They're constantly releasing new updates, which are just wonderful. The triage takes over your email, so we have internal communication through comments and things rather than emailing each other. You've got full visibility over the work and where the work's at. Checklists are, I guess, developed for each single work item that you have within your practice. And one of the things that I love, and I mentioned before about Practice Ignition, is Practice Ignition has a integration with Carbon, which as soon as the client accepts the proposal, it creates their contact, it imports all the work, which has all the checklists established in it, and it creates an onboarding job, which automatically is sent to the client to gather their details that we need once they sign up with us. So I think with the integrations, Carbon's just a wonderful tool that has made our business a lot more efficient and has made, we run a very remote team. And so it allows me to have that visibility over what the team is doing that I wouldn't have otherwise necessarily.
Yeah, that's great. And yeah, I've, you know, definitely, you know, speaking to clients, always hear good words about Carbon, and it's going to be really interesting to see what they do over the next, you know, 12 months, having, you know, that big, you know, raise, you know, capital raise this week. It's going to be interesting watching that space.
And the only sorry.
I know you go.
Go.
Negative thing that I would put on Carbon as well, similar to what James said about XPM, is the reporting side. It's pretty much non-existent, but I know that they are working on it at the moment. But being able to have that visibility over billing and write-offs, it's just not there at the moment, which is a big downfall.
Yeah, and I've always loved Carbon conceptually, and you know, they were coming in to solve a problem. And the only reason we never went there is that we came from an unintegrated world of, you know, having iFirm and, you know, MYOB tax and Sol 6 and, you know, just messy multiple databases to update. And whatever the politics between Carbon and Xero are, the fact that you know, they refuse to integrate and, you know, refuse to let anybody integrate and act as a middle ground sort of between them. Yeah, and so you can have a consistent client list across the two. Because of that, it's really hobbled Carbon's uptake because you know, it's a fresh looking at practice management from how an accounting firm should work in an efficient way, whereas, you know, XPM is from, you know, Workflow Max, which was, you know, we're an architecture firm with, you know, 10 jobs on the go. Like, we've got probably 600 open jobs in XPM and it's unusable. So anyway, that's my comments on that.
Totally agree. It would be an absolute machine if it would integrate with XPM and Xero.
Somebody patch the relationship. Somebody
Yeah,
fix
that's what I
this
was saying
rift.
earlier to Brendan. Yeah, it needs to happen.
Yeah, great, awesome. That's great hearing that. And yeah, comments in the chat. There's lots of people in there commenting, saying the same thing. Carbon's great for workflow and for comms with the team. Yeah, awesome, Brendan.
All right, thanks everyone. That was incredible. I was glued to my headphones there, and good to see the chat lighting up as well, which has been fantastic, really good. And I appreciate all the comments and feedback. And there may be a few questions in there, which I'll try to get back to you a bit later. Just quickly before we sort of start to wrap up, I just wanted to run some questions by probably the three of you. Feel free to jump in, but in the last 12 months, and you may have gone through this already, so feel free to recap. Any experience you had from implementing cloud-based practice tools last year? So any positives, negatives, anything that's caused you grief, for possibly, let's start with you, Katie. Do you have any war stories from last year?
Yeah, so mine actually, jumping back on Carbon, is to do with Carbon. We actually tried to implement Carbon a couple of years ago and did it unsuccessfully. I just couldn't get the team to jump on board. And then we tried again in 2021 and were successful this time. But a big learning that I have out of that is make sure that you have it all set up and ready to go before you get the team on board. Don't try to do it while everyone's using it. It is an absolute nightmare. And I think that goes for any app that you're going to use. Just have it fully set up and ready to go and ready to implement before the team jumps on and starts using it, because that was a massive pain point. And I find that I'm still fixing things now because I wasn't smart in the beginning. Another thing as well, we had Fresh Method come on and transition us from, I know it's not probably a cloud-based app, but from Google to Office 365, and that created huge efficiencies for us. It allowed us to get rid of a lot of apps that we were paying for and didn't need. For example, Slack. We now use Teams, and we've now used the whole Office 365 suite and have saved a lot of money and also increased a lot of efficiencies throughout the firm by doing that.
Nice. Thank you so much for sharing that. Just a comment from Adrian Matthews. Last year implemented suite files and ATO smart docs and settled in nicely. So that's really good to hear. James, what about you? What's your last year looking like?
Our biggest implementation was that shift from suite files to FYI. Any major software implementation will never go as smoothly as you think it will, and the implementation teams, whether it's the company itself or a outsourced implementation person like an XPM, there's a bunch of them that do it. Yeah, they'll make promises, and those promises may not be fully realized. I was very, very upfront and clear with FYI that I've been through these implementations before, and I know where they go wrong, and I know that we need you to hold our hand. We need you to help us set up all of our templates, help us do that. We need a lot of training sessions, not just like 1 30-minute training session and let us go on our own. And they were very, very receptive to that and kind of adjusted what we needed and what we didn't need in the implementation. And the biggest issue was essentially getting the team to change their mentality. Like everybody bitching about, where's my documents? I used to save my monthly payroll things in a folder called payroll in there, and how do I find it? And needing, instead of just dumping randomly named files into a folder, and you kind of then go, oh, there's six files in this folder, so I can find the one that I need. Being a bit more conscious of naming files. So these things are always user. I think ultimately that it's the training and it's the mentality. I will echo that we've basically always been Office and then Microsoft and Office 365, and 365 is an amazing suite at an amazing price point. There is so much good stuff in there. Again, we went from Slack, which was a good product, to Teams, which it's like the Dex Tub thing. Like, it's not as good as Slack. It's a bit slow and bulk, there's a lot of crap in there, but it does the job if it's going to save us $5,000 a year. Like Slack isn't $5,000 better than Teams, and Teams integrates with everything else as well. So, you know, I guess our stack, just to briefly go, is we've got XPM, FYI, and Office, and Xero. Like that's our core, how we run our practice. And then we've got all these other things bolted on that kind of, you know, iron out the kinks, hopefully.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. So I think the key theme there is training. Make sure your people are on board, otherwise it's just going to fall apart. We've got one more question. I might just leave this one, Katie and James, if you can just maybe drop in the chat what you're maybe looking to implement next year while we move on to the rest. I'm just conscious of time. If you could do that, maybe if anyone else wants to drop in what they're planning on implementing in the new year, that'd be great to hear from the rest of you as well. We mentioned already that in your in the follow-up, you'll be getting a copy of this report. So it'd be great to look through that. Appreciate the PracticeProtect team putting that together for us. And I just wanted to give John, if you can jump on and share your screen, I would love to get a bit more knowledge around PracticeProtect. And obviously, you know, all of these apps are running through PracticeProtect. So it'd be great to hear how that all works.
Yeah, great. If you just stop, I'll share my screen there. So yeah, I'll give you guys the quick, conscious of time, whistle stop 2-minute tour of PracticeProtect. Can you see the screen here?
Yeah, we got it.
Yep. Okay, awesome. So the idea with PracticeProtect is that, you know, it's hosting, you know, or hosts the access for all of your cloud applications. Okay, so the idea is that you and your team, you don't need to know what the passwords are. Okay, so the passwords have been set up, stored in PracticeProtect and restricted from the team. So that takes away the risk of them mismanaging passwords, you know, setting the same password for everything, using their dog's name as the password. Okay, so the idea is all of the access is secured through here. Now, you can have pretty much any online application stored in here. And you can see I've got, you know, all of the, you know, all of the accounting apps we've been talking about today in my portal. As well, with this view, it is made unique to the user. So the idea is that the whole team are on this and you only have access to what you need. Okay, so, you know, Katie, I know that you guys are using PracticeProtect. So obviously the view which you have would be different to the rest of your team members. You'd, you know, likely have a lot more applications than them in there. Okay, and then in terms of security with PracticeProtect, you know, we enforce two-factor authentication, so you have to use that to get in. And then you can also set up robust security policies to restrict access. So that can be restrict down to locations, to devices. You can really get as granular as you want. And also that's on a per user basis. As well, everything in PracticeProtect is tracked and monitored. Okay, so you can see my activity log here, showing where I'm logging on from. So you can see the sales team. We've got team in South Africa, Philippines, Australia, all using this account. And you can see the activity, so logging in, launching different applications. Okay, and then when it comes to launching an application, and I'll use Practice Ignition as the example, and then a nice segue over to you, Brendan. But really, you know, it's as easy as clicking on the application. PracticeProtect has stored that username and password, so you don't need to know what the details are. And then it takes you through to those applications where you can work from. And obviously in Practice Ignition, you can create your proposals. And yeah, I think that's probably a good moment to hand over to you, Brendan. I will just say we do have a lot more security in place, and you know, obviously that's just a quick 2-minute overview. So if you want more information, obviously we can chat later. But Brendan, I'll hand over to you for the PI part.
Thanks, John. As I mentioned earlier, I struggle to come across anyone using PI who isn't using PracticeProtect. So if you're not using PracticeProtect, please get on it because it's a great tool. Okay, hopefully you can see my screen. I just wanted to show the end result of what a Practice Ignition proposal looks like. Now, keeping in mind that today we've been talking about things like, you know, obviously electronic signing, sending out of the actual proposal itself, and probably a big one is data management, which Katie mentioned earlier. So what we have here is an electronic proposal that goes out to your clients, and you can brand it up. This is just a fictional growth accounting firm here. So we can get a brochure, and then down the bottom, you can see your clients will actually be stepped through the proposal process, saying step 2 is a summary of all the services you're offering. And I've grouped them all together into different sort of categories. And I've got my software subscriptions all grouped together. There's a Dext, or maybe not a Dext based on today's conversations. And then we've got an individual tax return as well. And then on the third step, we have a schedule outlining exactly what is being charged and how often. You can see here we've got a $400 a month charge for accounting services, which is a recurring fee. We've got our software subscriptions also being charged at $89.50 all up for these 2 subscriptions as a recurring fee. And then I've got an individual tax return as a one-time bill and completion amount. The next step is my favorite step, which is your data management. So every time you send out a proposal, you have the option, as James mentioned, he has this as a non-required step, so people can step over it. But a lot of our users choose to have a requirement here to add their payment details in. So even if it's a bill and completion amount, you're still capturing the client's credit card or payment details up front. So yeah, I can do this. It can be through a bank account or a credit card. I'll just add a dummy number in here. And that's as easy as that. So what's happened there is your client's payment details have been stored, and then it'll unlock the next step where they need to just sign and accept the engagement letter, which is fully customized depending on the services and the client. And then we have an accepted proposal. And the beauty of that is we've now gone ahead and set up all your invoices automatically deploying into Xero, jobs deploying into XPM or Carbon, depending what you're using, and your payments are fully automated. So all your future payments for those recurring monthly items are going to get collected automatically. And when you're finished doing the tax return, you hit the button in PI to say it's done, and we'll collect that $275 from your client. Super easy. So I'll stop there. One other thing I'll mention is that it's really, really easy to set that up. You have a customer success manager once you start joining PI, and we can help you with your templates, set up your services. You can be up and running within a couple of hours, if not sooner. I do have a poll, which I want to launch for anyone who is interested. I know that a lot of people have said they're interested in either PI or PracticeProtect. There should be a poll up on the screen now. So drop in your option there if you'd like to learn more about Practice Ignition, if you'd like to learn more about PracticeProtect, or you'd like to get the recording and the report, just give us an answer there. And I know there's a lot of people on here that are already using PI, which is great based on some of the names I've seen. So I'll give that another minute or so. You can answer more than one as well. So if you want to hear from PI and PracticeProtect, click on both. And John, I don't know if you get this, but people often get us confused in terms of the name of the company. I'll be talking to somebody and they go, I'm using PracticeProtect. I'm like, oh, we'll get support tickets. Somebody will email us going, I can't log in. I'm like, you've got the wrong one.
Yeah. I've definitely had that. I've actually had it before. I've called a client. I'm like, John from PracticeProtect, and they started talking to me about proposals, and I was like, oh, I think, hang on, let's start again.
Actually, you know, we have a referral program.
Yeah.
All right, folks. All right, I'm going to leave that up while we finish up. I want to say a big thank you, John. Thank you for hosting this. Thank you for providing that wonderful data. It's been really interesting to see. Katie and James, I can't thank you enough for supporting Practice Ignition and also helping us out today with your industry insights and all of your wonderful 30 years of knowledge. I think I calculated between both of you, at least. So massive thank you to both of you.
Yeah. Thanks, Brendan. Thanks, Katie. Thanks, James.
All right,
no worries. Anytime.
Final thank you. Thank you to everyone else who participated. I'm going to look through the chat box. It's been absolutely on fire. So thank you for your participation. And we'll be catching up with you shortly. We'll send an email out with the follow-up in the next day or two. All right. Thanks, crew. Catch you later.
Cheers. Thank you.